Our last lesson in Chapter 2 focuses on solving multi-step problems using equations. Now, we just ended up solving multi-step equations back in 2.9. In this lesson, we're going to focus on creating equations to solve those problems. Now, it's really important that we understand our order of operations in order for us to solve these problems. There are certain steps that we need to take and solve first before we solve other parts of our expressions. That's where Pemdas comes into play. Now, we're not going to focus on a lot of these different elements of Pemdas in order of operations. We're only going to be seeing a few in this lesson, but I wanted to expose you to all of what Pemdas is. So it starts with our P, which is parentheses. Whenever we see two numbers or three numbers inside of parentheses, that's what we have to solve first. We always have to solve what's in the parentheses first. The next element in Pemdas is E, which stands for exponents. Now, we don't work in exponents in the 4th grade, but I wanted to show you what exponents were. If you have an exponent of 2, that means we have to multiply that number times itself. We won't see exponents, but there they are. The next two steps in Pemdas are multiplication and division. Now, I have them in the same color because when you see multiplication and division in an expression, you do them in the order that you see them. So if you see division first, that's what you solve first. If you see multiplication first, that's what you solve first. Now, all we're going to be looking at in this chapter is multiplication, but when we go further down the line, we will see division and multiplication. So just remember, it does not matter which comes first as long as we solve whatever is first in our expression. So if it's division, we do that first. If it's multiplication, we do that first. And we can show that by just an arrow on top. So whatever comes first is what we're going to solve in that equation. The last two things in our equation, the last two parts of order of operations would be addition and subtraction. So after we've solved what's in parentheses, after we solved our multiplication or division, then we go ahead and we solve our addition or subtraction. Just like with multiplication or division, when we solve addition and subtraction after we've solved everything else, we solve it in the order that we see it. So if we see addition first, that's what we're going to do. If we see subtraction first, that's what we're going to do. We always solve our equations from left to right. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few equations and solve them using our order of operations. Okay, here's our first equation, and it's quite long. So what we need to do is we're going to go back and we're going to refer to our Pemdas at the front. If we see parentheses, that's what we solve first. There are no parentheses. There are no exponents. Now we move on to multiplication or division. All I see in this problem is multiplication, so that's what I'm going to solve first. Now the great thing about this is I can solve both of my multiplication problems at the same time. So I have two multiplication problems in this problem, 9 times 16, and I have 3 times 12. I'm going to go ahead and solve 9 times 16, and then I'm going to solve 3 times 12, and I'm going to rewrite my equation. I'm going to solve 16 times 9 using my multiplication with regrouping method. So I start with 9 times 6, I get 54. I put my 4, carry my 5. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 5 more is 14. So 9 times 16 is 144. And then I'm going to put my addition sign, because here's my addition sign, and it just comes all the way down. And my next step is going to be to multiply 3 times 12. So I'm going to use multiplication with regrouping again. 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3. So 3 times 12 is 36. And I'm going to go ahead and look at the next part of my equation because I'm trying to solve for my variable n. And I see that there's a subtraction sign there, so I need to bring that down. And then I see my 42. And that also needs to come on down. So now I have a new equation. I've solved for two pieces. I've solved my multiplication, and I don't have any division. So now I'm on to my addition and subtraction. And with addition and subtraction, I solve that how I see it from left to right. So I'm going to first start over here with 144 plus 36. That's the piece I'm going to solve first. When I add those together, I get 180. My next step is to rewrite my problem again. Here I have my subtraction in my 42. I'm going to bring that down. And I'm going to solve this last piece of my problem. So now I've gotten to my subtraction piece, so now I'm going to subtract. And when I subtract 180 minus 42, I get 138 as my final product, and that is equal to my variable of n. So I solved my multiplication first. I solved 9 times 16. I brought down my addition sign. I then solved 3 times 12. I brought down my subtraction sign. I brought down my 42. And then I solved my addition and subtraction in the order that I saw it. So I added first and then I subtracted. It's helpful if I write Pemdas at the top of my paper or at the top of each problem just as a reminder, and it allows me to go through and make sure I'm following the correct steps. Let's go ahead and take a look at another problem, and we're going to solve again using order of operations. Here I have the problem 6 times 43 plus 8 times 19 minus 39. I'm going to go through my Pemdas and make sure that I hit all of my steps. So I start with parentheses. I don't see any parentheses. I don't see any exponents. My next step is multiplication or division, and I'm going to solve that in the order that I see it. So I see some multiplication right here. Then there's addition. I'm going to skip over that. I'm not ready for addition yet. I see some more multiplication. And then I see some subtraction, so I'm going to skip that. Okay, this means my first step is going to be to multiply 6 times 43 and then to multiply 8 times 19. To solve these two problems, I'm going to use the area model and then I'm going to use expanded form. So I'm going to start with 6 times 43 and I'm going to use the area model to solve this. So 6 times 40 gives me 240 and 6 times 3 is 18. And when I add, I get 258. So I'm going to go ahead and put that underneath my problem, 258. And then I'm going to go to my next multiplication problem, and I'm going to solve that using expanded form. So 8 times 10 is 80, and 8 times 9 is 72. And when I add those two things together, I get 152 as that product. And I'm going to go ahead and write that underneath that problem. Now I need to figure out what I need to bring down. I see an addition sign here. I need to bring that down between my two products. And then I have my subtraction sign in my 39, which I'm going to bring down. And then it's going to equal my n. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down as well. My next step is to make sure I don't have any more multiplication or division. I do not in what I have left. So I'm going to cross out my m and my d. And now I'm on to my a and my s. And so my addition and my subtraction, I'm going to solve those from left to right. So I see my addition first, so that's what I'm going to solve first. I have 258 plus 152. Now with such large numbers, you probably are going to want to rewrite the problem off to the side to make sure that you add correctly. So when we add 258 plus 152, we get 410 as our product. And then I have to bring the rest of my problem down. So I have the rest is right here. I'm going to bring this on down. My minus 39 equals n. My final step is to solve through subtraction. So 410 minus 39. I can come over to here where I just added and I can write that minus 39 to make sure I subtract correctly. I have to borrow and carry and borrow again. So I get a difference of 371, which I would write down here and bring down my equals to n, and that is the answer to my problem. 371 equals n. So I wrote Pemdas at the top of my page. I worked through all of my steps, making sure I was doing them in order, and I ended up with my final product. Go ahead and give this next problem a try. In this problem, you have 7 times 15 plus 4 times 12 minus 5 plus 10 equals n. Work through your order of operations. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is look at my parentheses. I don't have any, so I'm going to cross out my p. I'm looking for exponents. I don't have any of those. I cross out my E. And now I'm on to multiplication and division, whichever I see first in order from left to right. So I see a multiplication sign right here, 7 times 15. I go through my problem, there's addition, oh, there's another multiplication, 4 times 12, subtraction and addition. I'm not ready for those yet. Now I need to solve both of these products. So I'm going to solve with multiplication with regrouping. 7 times 15 gives me 105. And 4 times 12 gives me 48. Now I need to go through my problem and bring down the rest of the items I haven't used. So I bring down my addition sign, my subtraction sign, my 5, my addition sign, my 10, my equals n. Those are all the things I have not used. My next step is to go through order of operations, make sure I'm ready to go. So I don't see any more multiplication or division. Now I need to move on to addition and subtraction in the order that I see it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with this addition right here of 105 plus 48, which gives me 153. I'm going to bring everything down. So I have my minus 5 plus 10 equals n. I'm going to move from left to right. So my next step is going to be to do this subtraction right here. 153 minus 5 is going to give me 148. And now I'm going to rewrite my problem with bringing the rest of my problem down. So I have plus 10 equals n. And my final step here is to add. So 148 plus 10 is 158. Equals n, and that's my final answer. Now we're also going to see some word problems that we have to use order of operations to solve. The first step for these word problems is going to be to write our equation. So we need to break these word problems down. We're going to do the first one together, and then I'm going to let you do the next few yourself. Our word problem here says John has 3 bags with 24 baseballs in each bag. Jill has 5 bags with 16 softballs in each bag. John lost 6 baseballs. How many baseballs and softballs do they have left? All right, this problem has a lot of words in it, a lot of numbers. I need to figure out what I'm doing with them. So John has 3 bags with 24 baseballs in each bag. So he has 1 bag with 24 baseballs, 2 bags with 24 baseballs, and 3 bags with 24 baseballs. If I wanted to figure out how many total baseballs he had, I would multiply 3 times 24. So for John, that's what I would do. That would be the equation that I would set up. 3 times 24. Now, I go on to my problem, and it says Jill has 5 bags with 16 softballs in each bag. So if I had 5 bags for Jill, and she had 16 in each bag, and I wanted to know how many softballs she had, I would be multiplying 5 times 16. Then it says John lost 6 baseballs. If you lose something, we have to subtract it. And I want to know how many baseballs and softballs they have left, which means these 2 products are going to be added. So here is the problem I have to solve. 3 times 24 plus 5 times 16 minus 6. That's what I need to solve. That's my equation. So now I need to go through my order of operations and solve this. Okay, so I'm starting with parentheses. I don't have any of those. I don't have any exponents. I'm moving on to multiplication and division. I see a multiplication sign right here, and I see one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and solve for those 2 products. I'm going to solve 3 times 24 first, and I'm going to use the area model to solve. 3 times 20 is 60. 3 times 4 is 12. When I add those together, I get a product of 72. My next problem is going to be 5 times 16. I'm going to solve that using expanded form. 5 times 10 is 50, plus 5 times 6 is 30, which gives me a product of 80. And now I'm going to bring my items down from my problem that I have not used yet. So I haven't used my addition sign, that comes down. And I haven't used my -6, so that also comes down. My next step is to go back to order of operations, my Pemdas, and see if I can cross something out. I don't have multiplication or division left, I just have addition and subtraction, and this tells me I'm going to solve in the order that I see it. So the first step in my order of operations now is going to be to add, and then I'm going to bring down my -6 and subtract, so I need to add first. 72 plus 80 gives me 152. And then I'm going to bring down my -6. And so I'm going to subtract 152 minus 6. And when I subtract, I get 146 as my final answer. So our question says how many baseballs and softballs do they have left? They have 146 baseballs and softballs left. So my first step with this word problem was to write my equation. I found which I needed to multiply and which I needed to add, and I wrote my whole equation out. Then I followed order of operations and solved in the order that I needed to solve in to find my answer. I want you to go ahead and figure out what your equation is for this next problem, and then you're going to solve for that equation. So our next problem says Martin has 5 boxes with 31 marbles in each box. He has 7 boxes with 29 shells in each box. If he gets 16 more marbles from a friend, how many marbles and shells does he have now? Go ahead and write your equation and solve for how many marbles and shells does Martin have now. 5 boxes with 31 marbles in each box means I'm going to be multiplying 5 times 31. He also has 7 boxes with 29 shells in each box, which means I'm going to be multiplying 7 times 29. And if he's getting 16 more from a friend, I'm going to add 16. And because I want to know how many marbles and shells he has, I'm going to add my marbles and my shells. So my first step now is to write my order of operations, Pemdas, down, and then solve in the order that's necessary. So we look for parentheses, and we don't have those. We also don't have any exponents, so now we're going to solve multiplication and division in the order that we see it. We have multiplication right here, and we have some right here as well. So we're going to go ahead and solve 5 times 31 and 7 times 29. I'm going to use multiplication with regrouping for both of these problems, and I want you to notice how when I'm using multiplication with regrouping, the larger number is on top and the single digit number is underneath. This is important to make sure that we're multiplying correctly. We'll do 2-digit times 2-digit next chapter, but for this chapter, make sure that your 2-digit number is on top, or 3-digit number, 4-digit number, whatever it is. So 1 times 5 is 5, 3 times 5 is 15. So 5 times 31 is equal to 155. Then we have 29 times 7. So 9 times 7 is 63. I put my 3, carry my 6. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 6 more is 20. So I have 203 as my product. My next step is to bring everything down that I haven't used. So I haven't used that addition sign, and I haven't used my plus 16. So I'm going to bring that on down. Pemdas tells me my next step is to check to make sure I have any more multiplication and division, which I do not. So I'm going to move on to addition and subtraction in the order that I see it. My first step here is going to be to add 155 plus 203. I get 358. Then I need to bring down what I have not used yet, so my plus 16. And my final step is going to be to add those two numbers together, 358 plus 16. And I get a final answer of 374 marbles and shells. I always need to specify what my answer means. In this case, I'm talking about marbles and shells. Okay, go ahead and try this next problem. This is going to be the last problem for this lesson. Trina has 2 bags with 17 pine cones in each bag. She has 6 boxes with 24 acorns in each box. If she trades 5 pine cones for 10 acorns, how many pine cones and acorns does she have? Go ahead and write your equation and then solve 4 pine cones and acorns. Because she has 2 bags with 17 pine cones in each bag, that's going to be 2 times 17. And then she has 6 boxes with 24 acorns in each box, so 6 times 24. Then she's going to trade in 5 pine cones. So she's going to subtract 5 pine cones and gain 10 acorns. So we need to subtract and then add. When you trade something in, you give it back. And then when you're trading it in for something else, you're going to add that something else. So here's our equation, and because we want pine cones and acorns, we're going to be adding our pine cones and our acorns together. Now we need to go ahead and write Pemdas off to the side so we can solve using our order of operations. We don't have any parentheses or exponents, so we're going to solve multiplication and division in the order that we see it. We have multiplication right here and right here, so we need to solve 2 times 17, and then we need to solve 6 times 24. I'm going to go ahead and use partial products to solve 17 times 2. So my first step is to expand 17 into 10 and 7. I need to multiply each piece times 2. 10 times 2 is 20. 7 times 2 is 14. I'm going to add those 2 pieces and I get 34 as my product. I'm going to use partial products to solve my next problem as well. So I have 24, I expanded, and I'm going to multiply each piece times 6. And then I'm going to go ahead and add. And I get 144 as my product. And then I need to bring everything down. So I have my addition sign, and I have my minus 5 plus 10. And that comes on down. I go back to order of operations. It's still asking me for multiplication and division. I've taken care of both of those, so I'm going to cross those out. And now I'm going to solve addition and subtraction in the order that I see it. So I'm going to have to go ahead and start with my addition right here. 32 plus 44. And I get 176. And now I need to bring my problem down. So I need to bring my subtraction sign down, my 5 plus 10. My next step right here is going to be to subtract 5. So I have 171 left. And then I need to bring down my plus 10. When I add 10 more, I get 181 as my final answer. So 181 pine cones and acorns. Again, it's important that we list what our answer is. So we're talking about pine cones and acorns. Okay, that's order of operations. That is solving using order of operations and making sure we are writing those equations down. Make sure we're reading those questions correctly and putting the correct signs between our numbers. That's our lesson for today. Tomorrow's lesson is going to be our review of Chapter 2. See you then.